Are there any further questions? Representative DeGraaf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, I have lots of questions. I'm from El Paso County, so as you can imagine, there's been quite a bit around this. First of all, I'd just like to say questions are not necessarily conspiracies, so I don't think that was a very appropriate comment on your part. What we're talking about, if we go around the corner to the museum, there's a ballot box, and it's clear. And that transparency is something that I think we all long for. What we're putting our votes into right now is a black box, and it's a black box. We can't see the code, and we haven't seen external audits of the code. It should be a very simple code, as Representative Baisley said. And auditors, that's what auditors do. They look at accredited software. They look at accredited systems. Proprietary, I should say, that can't be shared. So some of the things, I appreciate what you're saying, but some of the things that cause doubt is when we look at the election results and they are from the people that look at data, they're basically organically impossible, and then denials. Some of the issue. I appreciate you bringing up paper ballots, because that is, of course, why we have paper ballots, is to be the final arbiter in this. But we are also in El Paso County. They were unable to access the paper ballots, and that was through the former Secretary of State, and that was also through the current Republican chairman, who somehow got 5% more votes than anybody in his, which causes questions. In how to deal with that in a very limited race, in a very in one county, getting 5% more votes for the person person who was in charge of printing the ballots on a sole source contract with somebody who was also on the board of the county chair. These are things that cause issues, and they were not allowed to do a paper ballot recount. I do understand the risk limiting audit, but the CRS specifies that you're also supposed to look at a section of voter verified ballots. I don't think there's really any question that the machines can count the ballots, but it's always a matter of whether the machines counted it correctly. So my understanding of the voter verified ballots is that you would take a slice and hand count those ballots and then actually compare it. If you do just a randomized section and say we selected 1,000 ballots and then we count them to see if they count correctly, that really doesn't tell you. It really doesn't tell you anything. And the only thing that we were allowed to look at in El Paso County was the digital image, and the digital image is not even recognized in the CRS. But that was specified as part of your rules, that your rules were that they were acting in accordance with your rules, and I have the different. I'm trying to make things a little bit brief, but that your rules were actually in violation of the CRS. And so when the rules appear to be in violation of the CRS, and that the people that are asking for a recount can't get a recount, those are not conspiracies. Those are outright obstructions. In El Paso County, it was fought all the way to the Supreme Court by at least 5 people, as you know.
Representative DeGraaf, do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay, then please ask it, sir.
Well, I want to know. This goes to how are we going to, if you want to make these things safe and trusted, this whole system needs to be transparent, and you have lots of things, and it's not transparent at all, and that's why people don't trust it. I think we need to get to a point where it's trusted, but I think you also need to listen to the people as to why they're not trusted.
Okay, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Chair Woodrow. Thank you, Representative. Our elections are transparent, they're safe and secure, and we're happy to do a briefing with you at any point. There's bipartisan oversight. There's a reason Colorado is commended for our election system. Our current election system was predominantly set up by Republicans, including Republican Secretary of State Wayne Williams. There is bipartisan support for many of those reforms, including by Republican county clerks. As you know, there are more Republican county clerks in the state of Colorado than Democratic county clerks. And one of the great, I think, successes of Colorado is the way that Republicans and Democrats work together to deliver great elections, world-class elections for the people. In terms of some of the points you brought up, recounts, you can do a recount in the state of Colorado. We had the first recount in 20 years, last election, fueled by conspiracy theories, which reaffirmed again that the election outcome was correct. There was litigation based on conspiracy theories, and the conspiracy theorists lost. When audits are done, they are pulling paper ballots. And rules, by the way, that my office promulgates are vetted for both legal and constitutionality by the Attorney General's office. I am happy to engage on any further conversation during this time or after, Representative. We are happy to provide you with any information. But again, there is a difference between fact and fiction. We are based on fact, and we will continue to push out fact. And I hope you join us in making sure that Coloradans have correct information about the election processes in our state.
Representative Bottoms. And then we'll come back to you, Representative DeGraaf.
So some of the statements about facts, there's been many, many groups, including entire states, that have found the machines that we use to be so broken and so corruptible and so hackable that they have made it illegal to use those machines within their states. But somehow magically our state uses the same machines with no hackability, no problems. So you said that there was videos made of people that were bragging on the gold standard. The dozens of people that came to me and said these were people auditing the elections, watching the elections, that came to me and said there were problems. I told them to call your office, but none of those people ended up in the videos. These were quite a few people that were very upset about what they saw individually, specifically, that showed corruption, showed problems, showed inconsistencies, and these were specifically things that were given by you as this is the way it's going to be done, although they actually disagreed with CRS. How many times do you break the CRS rules and then say it's just the way that it's supposed to be? How do you answer breaking CRS?
I just want to remind the members of the committee that we're not here to disparage any of the witnesses or accuse them of breaking Colorado law. To the extent that you have questions, you are more than free to ask them. Madam Secretary.
My question to that, sir, is that I'm addressing what she said, not what I said first. She brought this up first. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, if you care to respond.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. The Colorado Secretary of State's office follows all Colorado law and the Colorado State Constitution, and the allegations that you are making are untrue.
Are there any further questions? Representative DeGraaf.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Whatever the protocol is. Again, in deference to the Secretary of State rules, the El Paso County Clerk, Republican, cited the County Clerk and Recorder, citing CRS 1-1-110, paragraph 1. The County Clerk and Recorder follow the rules and orders promulgated by the Secretary of State pursuant to this code. But pursuant means in accordance with. So that means the clerk must follow the Secretary of State rules in accordance with the CRS, but it is not required to follow a rule if it is not in accordance with the CRS. One of the rules that I'm thinking about specifically is the risk limiting audit, and the way the audit is supposed to be done via a snapshot. Again, it's not a matter of whether the machine can count ballots correctly. It's a matter of whether the machines or the software reported the results correctly, and that can only be done with a hand count. And in El Paso County, of hand count of the paper ballots, which are the voter verified paper records, which was denied, And then when it went to the court, I don't know if those were the court proceedings that you were talking about, but each court denied even viewing the evidence. So it just continued to go up, and I guess now it's a more of a civil rights aspect now for being denied due process. But these rules were put in place, and I'm fine with it. But what your risk limiting audit, which seems more of a limited risk of, is not actually addressing the CRS. The CRS means that it needs, because ultimately these voting systems are your highest value military targets in the entire country, because they determine who determines the outcome of power and money. So they have, obviously, and you've alluded to that with all this stuff. And when I look at it and I say, okay, well, these things, when the election judges are going back and forth and they're using, say, USB ports, USB and changing data. And USB ports were discontinued by the Department of Defense years ago when I was flying MQ-9s because they were all found to be embedded with malware. And then we're supposed to trust that system. Well, now my conspiracy theory goes all the way back to the military. When there are wireless devices that have to be disconnected, you can't turn off a wireless device. You can only mechanically disconnect. When I stood up a top secret vault, I couldn't have a computer with no Wi-Fi within several feet of an actual phone line because that was hackable. And now you have these machines that have multiple ports. You talked about whistleblower protection, but your office just prosecuted Tina Peters for doing her actual job, and then reporting on this. Now,
Rep. DeGraaf, do you have a question, sir?
Yes, I want to know.
But then please ask it, sir.
Why are you being inconsistent in whistleblower protection when, say, Tina Peters comes to you and says, "I think there's a lot of errors, and we found a lot of errors," and then it becomes a where she's just basically run into the ground.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. That was a lot. I will try to touch base on many of those things. First off, when we do audits in the state of Colorado, paper ballots are polled and checked against tabulation. That is how it's conducted. By humans, by bipartisan election judges, Republicans paired with Democrats. Second, if a court is ruling over and over and over against your assertion, then our rules are probably okay. That's how the legal system works in the United States. Third, in terms of USBs, we do not allow USBs that can be bought at CVS or Walgreens to be plugged into any type of election system in the state of Colorado. And if there's any specific and reasonable technological aspects that you think the office should be considering, we always are increasing our security and welcome those conversations. Fourth, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of State's office is not a prosecutor. I do not prosecute Tina Peters. I oversee the Colorado election system and ensure that every Republican, Democrat, and unaffiliated can vote in free, fair, and safe elections. Tina Peters is not someone to be commended. She allowed unauthorized access to Mesa County's voting equipment, putting in breach the voting equipment in Mesa County, putting in breach the ability for residents in Mesa County to have free and fair elections. She is facing 7 counts of felony, not brought by me, but brought by a Republican prosecutor, a Republican district attorney.
Thank you. We're going to return to the presentation. Does the Department of State have anything further?
No, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much to this Assembly for all your work in increasing Colorado's election security and voting access over the last 4 years. I look forward to continuing that work. I also look forward again to any reasonable suggestions of how to increase access and security in the state of Colorado. Threats are always emerging. Threats are always innovating, and we need to remain the leader when it comes to election access and security. Thank you to the committee, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the public testimony phase. We have several witnesses signed up. I would like to start with the folks who came down to the Capitol to testify in person. Can we please call up Dwight Johnson and Laurel Flahive? Hey, Ms. Flahive. Is there anyone else in person who would like to testify as well? Okay, then Mr. Johnson and Ms. Flahive, please come up.